The Been There Done That podcast is brought to you by Excel Strength and Performance. Excel S&P offers online individualized programming for athletes of all levels. They've just recently come out with a new website and it's really good. So let's go check it out. The link in the description below. Oh, sorry. I was just engrossed in this month's book recommendation of the podcast, The Science and Application of High Intensity Interval Training, brought to you by Paul Larson and Martin Boucher. I highly recommend this book, and I've integrated it into my own training programs for my athletes. And even the best thing about this book as well is that it comes with 20 different strategies for different sports. I highly recommend this book. Check out the link for this in the description below to purchase your own copy. Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of the Been There Done That podcast. This week I had on good friend and fellow strength and conditioning coach Ebony Charles. Ebony spoke about her blossoming career in the industry and also a little bit of banter thrown in between us. Thank you, Ebony, for coming onto the podcast. And now, onto the episode. Yep, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, just under Been There, Done That.
Oh, I have to subscribe.
You're not subscribed yet, and I have you on the podcast and you're not even subscribed. God, what a friend you are. I've known you for ages.
I followed on Instagram.
Well, it's not good enough, mate. I expect more out of our friendship.
Sorry, I'll do it now.
That's right. Just while Ebony is subscribing to me on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and YouTube. How long have we known each other for? Since 2018?
3 years.
3 years. I met you in Sydney before we went to the ASCA.
No, we met at the app. So subscribe now. Oh, nice. I'll give it a 5-star review too, one here.
Yes, 5-star reviews. If anyone's listening, 5-star review, please, on Apple Podcasts. So it promotes me up page.
Do you get like engagement? So you sit there and like reshares and
I try to promote a little bit on Instagram and through YouTube, and people like, especially like yourself, once we've done the podcast, and I'll promote you, I always tag you, just reshare it on Instagram and try to redirect all traffic to the Been There Done Matt @_Been There Done Matt on Instagram.
You couldn't get that. You couldn't get it without underscore.
No, I couldn't. Someone's already had it. So many people already had the @Been There Done That.
That sucks.
Oh. So yeah, when did you first met at?
We're at the airport, and you're wearing your North Adelaide shirt after winning the grand final.
So you knew who I was, but you didn't come say hello.
No, we met in the airport and had a beer. Coffee.
Jesus, there we go. You're pushing my memory back. No. I thought we met at the pub. At the pub. We're all strength coaches meet at the pub.
We went together and we stayed together.
Well, that's awkward. I don't remember that at all. Oh, dude, that's probably shining a pretty bad light on how drunk we actually get there.
Where did we stay? Where was it? Sydney?
I thought we went to a pub first, or we actually go to the pub together.
Wait, and this is in Sydney for the ASCA conference?
Yeah, the first one. The first one, because Lockie and I went the year before, 2017, to the
Gold Coast. You, Lockie and Ben went together and we stayed... Where did we stay?
I don't know, somewhere in Blacktown, I think it was. It was somewhere close to Sydney Park.
Yeah, and we had that little apartment, but you and Lockie were at the airport, and I met you there, and you were having coffee, and he was so pissed off because it was just after the Eagles versus North Adelaide scandal, and you were wearing
I was wearing my North Adelaide top just to piss him off.
Yeah, and I got there, and I was like...
So you first started your S&C career at Woodville West Torrens.
No, I did an internship at Cornell before that.
Oh.
Cornell University.
Talk a little bit about that.
So long story short, my cousin's next door neighbour is the head S&C coach at Cornell, big university in America.
Yep.
And he's like,
whereabouts in America?
Upstate New York. So it's about a 4-hour drive, middle of nowhere, probably equivalent to Gawler. Like if Gawler had a university. But it's like an Ivy League school, so it's like real preppy. Real smart. You have to have a top GPA to get in. And they don't I don't know. But they had 36 teams with 5 S&C coaches. So I went there for 2 weeks, full time. It was full-time hours.
So how long, sorry?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, because I did 4 weeks, 2 weeks. No, I don't know.
That's all right.
I think it was 4
2 to 4 weeks.
No, it was 4 weeks. Definitely 4 weeks. All right. So it was 4 weeks. And went there full-time and just ran with their football program and ice hockey, wrestling, basketball, volleyball, soccer, men's and women's, all of that.
So 5 days a week for 4 weeks you were there?
Yeah, for like 6 a.m. till like 2 p.m. So that was like, pretty full on. And then...
How was that experience?
It was different because obviously in the States, like I'd never been really into too much S&C. Like I'd never been exposed to it. Like they don't really teach you much at uni to begin with. Like you sort of go in, but this is like before the pre-placement stuff and everything. So it's sort of like you're still trying to find your feet and don't really know what you want to do. And I didn't really until I went over, I didn't realise it was such like a huge career. And I was like, wow, people actually do this full time. I was like, that's sick.
Coaching?
Yeah. Like I didn't realise they didn't really talk too much about it at uni. And then before then, you don't even know, no one really, like you see all these other jobs, but it's never like an advertised career pathway. So I went over there and I was like, these guys like sit in a gym all day and just like yell at athletes. But I don't know, it was cool. But it was very different. And then I came back and I was like, yeah, I think the last week while I was there, I was like, I need to go home. I was like, I need to do this when I get home. I was like, what am I going to do? So I just got LinkedIn. Didn't even know what LinkedIn was, but I got LinkedIn and then messaged a heap of people. And Lockie was like, yeah, come in. So I came in and then started at Woodville. Ended up there for 2 years, almost 2 years, I think. But that was the first experience in SA. But it was very different. You go from a college in America where you've got these...
professional.
Like, some of them were national level athletes. Like, they were drafted into the NHL. They were, like, all-American wrestlers. These, like, really big guys. They were, like... Yeah, like, power cleaning, like, 100 kilos, just, like, easy, like, a piece of piss. And you go, and then you come back in, and you, like, SANFL was just, like, a huge, like... Almost like a culture shock, I guess. You go into, like, some, like...
The massive difference between how professionally they take training and performance over there to how, even though it's a second tier competition, how little it was even back then.
Yeah, I guess it's just over there. But, like, even the athletes and stuff, it's just so structured and they're, like... They just take it... I don't know. It's different here. It's just a culture. Like, everyone takes it probably as serious as everyone else. But over there, yeah, some of the athletes... They're not even, like... They won't get paid because they're in an Ivy League school. They're training... They're full-time athletes as well as study, but they don't get paid anything. Whereas other colleges, they get scholarships and stuff, but they can't get scholarships for athletics. So they're at this school based on their academics, but then are also, like, the top athletes in the country for a college level. And,
like, one of the biggest differences as well, you've got there's so many, like, the stakeholders for universities over in America. They put so much money into their sports programs because they expect to get, like, all these results, their names to be out there and to have such a, they want their athletes to be the best so their name gets out there. And that's why they want to get every bit of performance increased. They want to, optimize their performance. So they invest in all these programs to make their athletes better. And
that was a funny thing because this college they had no athletic funding because it's this academic
So it was
school.
all from...
Because it's an Ivy League school, there's no like athletics funding. It's all... That's why they had 5 S&C coaches for 36 teams. Because they're like, nah, it doesn't matter because all they care about their grades. It's just like an additional program. So their additional program was like still that
So
level.
what other Ivy League schools are there?
So there's like Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Cornell. I think there's a couple other.
So all the other ones have pride. They're also all the ones that are not Ivy League pride themselves on their sport programs.
Yeah. So then you've got like places like Ohio or Texas Tech or like UCLA, and those ones. I'm fairly sure their athletes they get full ride scholarships. They don't pay for anything. And they might get paid, but like even then, like they're all like sponsored by like Nike and Adidas and Under Armour and all of that, and they get like some of the girls tell me now that they went to, like, they did college and played college soccer, and they said they literally like just have like brooms with like shoes, and they're just like, oh, here's another pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Like, here's some clothes, like just like random stuff like that. But yeah, you get like a full ride, like their accommodation, like. If people go over there from Australia, you get, like, everything paid for. You don't have to work. You're just, like, full-time athletes.
Yeah, right.
Which is crazy. But
that's nuts. So we were saying before that it's not really at universities, strength and conditioning is not something that's get promoted as, like, a career pathway. What were you thinking about doing before?
Did
you have an idea of what you wanted to do at all?
No, so I didn't do year 12. So I had, like, a gap year, and that's when I went to America the first time. Before that, I was thinking of going to like the army and doing like intelligence. So I wanted to be like an intelligence officer, sort of like a spy. But then I was like, that seems a little bit like, I don't know. Like it was really something that really interested me, but I was like, don't know if I could do this. Like it'd be fun to be like.
How do you even get into being a spy?
Did
you look into it at all?
Yeah, you have to go like through the army, and then you have to like do heaps and heaps of tests and all of that sort of stuff, and then you just work your way up. But I was looking at it, and then I was hearing like people, and I was like, no, that's probably.
What made you think about being a spy? Was it just?
I think it's just lots like when I was in like year 1, I think I got tested for like the intelligence, like gifted intelligence. I had like a IQ of a genius. So then like I was always pushed down that career pathway. It was like do something smart, be an engineer, be like go in the army and do intelligence and like be an architect or do something like because I was just naturally like gifted. So I was always like pushed down that career pathway. But yeah, so then I took a gap year off and I went to America for 6 weeks by myself and stayed with my cousin.
Yeah.
And then I was like, just chilling. And then we went to an ice hockey game one day and I was just like watching the game and then I was like watching the athletes move and like I was like, holy shit, this is so different to like it just clicked. Like I never really thought of it in that way before. I was like, these ice hockey players, like they're on like what do you call them? Ice skates?
Skates.
Yeah. Ice skates?
Ice skates, yeah. We go with that.
I don't know either. Doesn't sound right. And they're like running but on ice skates, but they've got like a hockey back. And like I was just thinking of it compared to like sports in Australia. I was like, how differently would like this is what instead of like I don't know. This was going through my head when I was like watching the game. I was like, how like different is that compared to like sports we have here? I was like, what do they do for training? I was like, how do they prepare? And I just like clicked. And then I got back.
Were you interested in sports before?
Yeah, so ever since I was a little kid, like my goal from when I was probably like 7, 8 years old, I wanted to be like the head coach of North Melbourne. And I was like,
that's so crazy to look like a dream.
I know. And I was like
a little kid.
A little tiny kid, and I was like, I want to coach North Melbourne. And I was like, I don't really think that's too realistic. Like I've never played foot in my life, but I want to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so sport like I've always just been like and playing sport, like I always played like a decent level and stuff and like been pretty committed in that sense, but never really like looked at it in that aspect. So I did, and then I like called Mum when I got back to my cousin's house. I was like, Mum, guess what? I found what I want to do. I was like, I want to work in sport. Anyway, and then she found a degree at Flinders, and it was a brand new degree.
And that was called?
Exercise Science.
Exercise Science, and you're still completing that now?
No, I graduated.
There you go.
Did you know?
Well, we'll let you explain. How many subjects? How long were you there?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Or the degree?
So I started I don't know now. 2018? Maybe it was 2018. Maybe it was 2017.
2017 gives you 3 years.
No, it was 2017. Yeah, 2017. Yeah. So I started, and I like obviously didn't do year 12, so I was like, holy shit, this is intense. So I did.
So you didn't finish year 12?
I did a stat test.
Yeah, a stat test to get
in. So as soon as I got back from America, like within like a week, I did the stat test, and then like 2 weeks of that, I got accepted into uni, which was pretty cool. I got accepted into a Bachelor of Exercise Science, Master of Exercise Physiology. I thought, like, I didn't really know too much then. Like, I was sort of fresh. I didn't know anyone that was doing it. So I was like, heard of people doing human movement, but they were doing it for like PE teaching. So I was like, really like no idea. So it was pretty much just winging it basically. And then, yeah, big jump in the deep end. And then I failed like a subject first semester, first year. And I was like, oh, shit. But then I ended up doing 3 subjects a semester over 4 years instead of 4 subjects over a semester over 3 years. So I spread it out that little bit further.
Yeah, okay.
Just to take the workload off and stuff. But So
you obviously found it a little bit harder, like a bit challenging coming from obviously not doing...
Yeah, so
because you didn't do year 12, then you took a year off?
Yeah,
so that was 2 years.
Oh, no, so my gap year was year 12, so
okay.
I like, if I did year 12, I would have just gone straight, like, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you took that year off. So then coming back into learning environment was a big challenge?
Yeah, it was a big jump, but managed.
Yeah. What about it was challenging the content?
Basically, like, I remember at school, they didn't really, like, especially just, like, referencing and, like, literature, like, we never looked at that at school. Like, you go into it and it's like, oh, you've got to do this referencing, and it's not just Harvard referencing. That was one thing I was like, oh, shit.
It's actually a bit more depth.
But, like, And the first semester, first year, I was at uni, like, I had back-to-back classes from, like, 9 till, like, 3 every day, which, going to Flinders, living in the Barossa, was a big trek. But just a lot of content. And then some of those topics had, like, a quiz, 4 lectures, a tutorial, a prac, then, like, a workbook each to do each week for, like, 4 different subjects. So there was just so much work, and going from, like, nothing to something was, like... Holy shit. But
how did you do anything to help you get through that? Was there
well, no, that's why I failed one subject, because I sort of focused on the other 3 and then like forgot about the other one.
And that's why you went to the split. You took spread it out just a little bit.
So I didn't do part-time, it was still full-time, like still classes full-time.
Mm-hmm.
But I did it that way, and it worked so much better. Like so much easier, and then I've like managed the rest of the way through.
So you went through 1 year uni, then you went to Cornell?
So 1 year uni, and then I went in the summer of the next year, so that was 2018.
Yep.
So was it July? All of July. I was there for the month of July. So yeah, that was in a uni break. So I was that eager to get over there. I was like, I can't wait till the end of the year. I was like, I just want to go now. So I went over there, in July. I probably could have gone back, like if I waited, I could have gone like over the Christmas holidays and stayed for longer, but I was like, no, I just want to go now. So I went over there. I think I went, obviously being a uni student, not very rich, I went over there with $400 to spend for the 4 weeks.
How did you manage to get through that? $100 a week?
Yeah, I was staying with my cousin, so I didn't have to pay for accommodation.
Do you have a cousin that lives up there?
Yeah, so I stayed at his house, and his neighbour was the one that works at the college.
Yeah.
So, but I was like, nah, I was like, I need to do this. So I went, and then, I didn't, just came out the other side, but went over there, and then came back, and then...
What was the biggest takeaway they took out from the coaches? So you said obviously it was more intent, like in terms of sporting and how they took their strength initiative, but what was it from the coach's perspective that you took away?
I think one thing was just like the respect the athletes had for the coaches. Like you could see them and they were just so switched on, like just being able to like get this group of like, you've got these footballers and like some of them are huge, massive guys, like I don't know what would be equivalent, I don't know, however many, whatever it is, pounds or whatever, but like these 200-pound guys, 6'5", like massive like linesmen, and there's like 30 of them, and then like you've got this like one little small guy and he's just like it's exactly what he says to do, like they all just like narrow it in, like switched on, and they do it, they don't argue, nothing. And then I think like that was the big thing I've just sort of like always sort of looked back on is their like ability to do that, and I'm like still kind of think I'm like, is that the athlete or is that the coach? Like
why do you think that is? Why do you think the athletes have so much respect for?
That's what I mean. Like I don't know if it's just like a culture because if they have their pathways, they do like S&C in high school, like they start so early. So I don't know if that's like a culture they've brought up, obviously with them and stuff, or it's just the coaching. But it was with all the coaches, like no one ever argued. Like you tell them, like even me going in there, me coaching them, like that was one thing, like they got me coaching pretty early, like they were doing cleans and stuff, and they're like, if you pick up on anything, they're like, tell them. And like,
did you have any experience with that sort of stuff as well, like coaching the clean or anything like that
beforehand?
Yeah.
No, so I had no experience going into this, so I was like fresh out the womb. But you learn, like when you're there for like the long hour days, it's a bit different to like one gym session a week. Like you've got those big solid blocks back to back. And they did some like personal development, like they were teaching us how to clean and stuff, and like or showing us, or they were doing it, and they're like, "Can you pick up and stuff?" So we learn all of that bit. But yeah, just like the athletes, they just did whatever you told them to do. They didn't argue. They didn't like, But
that's crazy.
It is because you got the people here, and you tell them they're like, go for a jog around the oval, and they're like, "No, fuck off!" Like,
it's crazy because wouldn't be all of the people over there, the colleges and that sort of stuff, but a lot of them, do they call you coach? Yeah, so that's like, what are they like, their little hierarchy and their kind of their system they have over there, like they call them coach or sir, like there's a lot of sirs that go around, ma'am. It's kind of, they do have that inbred kind of
not inbred,
like in like kind of they're not inbred, but they're ingrained in their society that to respect that.
Respect,
Good to have lots of,
Because there was one other female coach. Well, there was me and another intern. So there's an intern, she's probably 2 years older than me, but she was doing an internship at the same time. But she was from a college there. And then there was 4 male coaches and 1 female coach. And they probably like listened to her more than male coaches as well. Like they just like she was. I don't know. I don't want to say like, but she was like just like the classic like boss ass bitch. Like you whatever she said would go. Like no one argued. No one like. She was really like really friendly, but she was just like you didn't.
Did she have high expectations for them as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like everyone did like.
And she held them all accountable.
Yeah. So they all pretty much like they as a team as well. They all held each other accountable. Like coaches did, and it was just like this really high standard that went throughout the whole gym, I guess. And that's but most of the time was in the gym. They don't do much outdoor, like their training sessions aren't. So here you have your football session, you're going to do your conditioning, you're going to do your warm-up, and then you're going to like monitor them through the session. So they have their like coaches, and they'll do like their football training, but that's completely separate to their conditioning.
Right.
And so like there's not...
They do separate conditioning sessions to the training.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if that's like that college, or I'm fairly sure it's a pretty much like broad thing throughout the system, but like we'd have a conditioning session and they just do like pure conditioning, agility, change of direction, sprint work, and then whatever they do with their coach is whatever they do with their coach. So there's no sort of laid back.
It's okay. Yep.
Yeah. So they might do like, but then the S&C don't go to their trainings. They only go to their conditioning and like strength.
So who runs warm-ups?
Coach does.
Coach runs warm-up.
So yeah, the coach like has their coach stuff where they do like tactical skills.
Yeah.
And
so
then you have your conditioning sessions. But your conditioning sessions...
but it's not tacked on at the end of a training, it's separate days.
No, it's just separate like session. Because they were like...
What time of the season did you go? Was it off-season, pre-season,
in
season?
It was in summer, so the off-season.
Okay.
But then like it's so different. Each sport's different because they like run throughout the whole year. So
their off-season, they still have to train. They don't go away and not do anything for an off-season.
So what the thing was, because it's an Ivy League school, so all the other colleges, if you're just like a normal school that's like, just say, Ohio State, if you want your footballers to train there throughout the summer, they train there throughout the summer. But the only way at Cornell and the other, they have like different rules, like they have like a system. You're only like allowed to train, it might be 8 hours a week or something like that. I don't know, some like restriction on hours. And the only way you're allowed to train with the team over summer is if you're doing summer subjects. So the only kids that were there were paying extra tuition. So they might be paying like an extra 20 grand to study over the summer. And that was the only way they're allowed to train. So
no way.
So there was only like a certain amount of teams there. Like not everyone was there.
Yeah. But those who wanted to train and get better had to do an extra subject to stay over summer. Yeah,
so the only way you're allowed to train with the team is if you do extra subject over summer. Or like extra, like your summer school.
Wow.
But the rest weren't allowed to. And you're not even allowed to have contact with the S&C coach. Like the S&C coach can't program. So if he was like, this is what I want you to do over, you're not allowed to do that, supposedly.
So they'd have to go. If they wanted to continue their training, they have to go to an external provider.
Yeah, so you can't I think it was just with the Ivy League, you weren't allowed to like coach them in their off period unless they're not contracted, I guess, but unless they're enrolled, you're not allowed to have like any contact with them pretty much. Like which I thought was a bit weird, but I guess just because it's an academic school, they don't want the kids going there for the athletics and like caring more about their athletics than they do the academics.
Yeah. So when you came back and you got into Woodville with Lockie, how did your progress in your career and the S&C career take off from there?
It was a bit different, I guess, because you sort of jumped in. I guess I jumped in the deep end. You've gone to like one of the top schools in America with some top national. Like there was players that were like drafted to the NHL and like all American wrestlers and stuff. So you've got those people. High level performance, and it's like an elite environment pretty much. And then coming back to SANFL, where it is still classed as a semi-elite, sub-elite environment.
That would have been, that's the end of 2018.
2018.
Well, like middle was like after July.
So it was like August.
Yeah.
I think I got back the 1st of August. So Tuesday, I reckon. Jumped straight into the gym.
And it's not that SANFL and all the state and national football programs aren't professional. They are. They're semi-professional, but it's the idea of what they think, or their perception of what they think is training and all this sort of stuff, and it's different, right?
Yeah, that was another thing. And then you've got people like coming in and they've just had like 8-hour day of labour. Like,
they're not just starting.
They're not just like waking up in the morning fresh, just doing like some study or something.
So there's so it's harder to get them to do extra work on top of physical labour.
So
Some of them are sitting behind desks and working, and
you've got people.
So it's a different. You have to balance different.
Yeah, but they still train. They still train to like 5 times a week or whatever, and then
still
game
training
and
still playing game.
And
they're still actually held accountable as well, like from a performance evaluation standpoint, that these players do get evaluated every game, and it's not just they're out there to play to have fun. They're there to win.
Yeah.
And the club's expected to perform at a certain level, and if they're not, then your position on the team is is compromised, isn't it? So there's the players who have to go there at the end of the day.
Like, cutthroat, like you don't come to training. It's like, well, that's another thing. Like going from country, like being from the Barossa, you've got the country league, and it's like, oh, I don't feel like training today. It's like all good, but then if you're like good enough, your coach is gonna like you could literally just like not train at all.
There's no leeway.
No, but if you're like once you get to that sort of level, and it's sort of that aspect, and a lot of them like especially the younger guys, they're pushing for the AFL, so they're like busting their guts, like 17-year-olds trying to play like league football, trying to get drafted. Then you've got such a broad variety. You've got like 30-year-olds breaking down. You're just like holding them together with tape each week, and then you've got your little 17-year-olds that are just like buzzing around and everything in between. So
what was the first thing you had to do when you went down to Woodford West Highlands? What was like your kind of first coaching kind of experience?
I went to the gym session.
Yep.
And I shadowed Lockie for the 4 hours or whatever it was. But it was all pretty hectic. Like, just eyes everywhere, just trying to, like, get a grasp and things.
Did he get you coaching straight away, or did you obviously have to shadow and...
No, I just shadowed for a bit, and then I can't even really remember what happened after then. I know just, like...
It's a big whirlwind.
Yeah. I remember that pretty like vividly, like going in and stuff. But then like, after that, I don't know, just sort of all blurred out together.
Did he throw you in the deep end at all?
Yeah, I remember one, like it wasn't too long after, and he didn't come to a session, like a training session. I'd take a warm up and stuff, and that was like.
How'd you find that experience? Your first time in front of men?
I don't mind it. I actually feel pretty like I feel more comfortable with men than women. Mm-hmm. I feel like, especially when you've got, like. I don't know. I've always sort of found that I get quite a respect from men, but then when you've got like females that are older than you and stuff, and might like be in this like I think I was 19 at the time. So you've got this 19-year-old girl coming in like trying to tell you what to do, and these like girls are like 25, 26, and
there's a bit of a
they're like
stalemate.
Yeah. Whereas the guys just sort of they're pretty easygoing and just did whatever he said. But
that's interesting.
But I think that all went well, and then it's just sort of...
You didn't have any players try to bite back at you at all? Thought it's pretty... able to listen, you're pretty good?
Yeah, sort of did what it... Yeah, I don't think I had too many... Not with the men's anyway.
Yeah.
Not with the men's. I remember there was one time a girl told me that I had the live GPS on, and I said that they hadn't reached their target. They'd like been pretty low on the load throughout the week, and... we need to do some top-up running at the end of the training. She tried and tell me a Garmin told her that she did enough running. I was like, no, your Garmin's like, we're going off the GPS. And she's like, nah, my Garmin said this, I'm not doing it anymore. But that was probably like...
And then she just walked off?
She went to coach, and she's like, my Garmin's saying this, like, my Garmin said I've reached the amount of Ks, and it's like, well, the GPS is saying otherwise. But that was pretty much like the only really bite back you'd get is if they try and make them run more.
They always try to say that.
Yeah, no, it's like, you got to trust your Garmin over these, like, expensive GPS or whatever, but yeah, they always did it anyway. There was no one that really like cracked the shits big.
Well, that's good. That's kind of a good show of what the culture is like there. Every coach is the same, really, isn't it? So it shouldn't matter if you're male or female coach from a guy's perspective, anyway.
You'd hope so. You might get favoured differently though.
With who?
Your little suck up to your athletes.
I'm not a sucker. Don't look at me like that. No, mate, all those guys down there, they know I'm not a sucker. I don't need to be friends with any of them. Right. I just hold them to set a high expectation, a high standard, and if you don't meet it, they know. If they're not meeting that standard, they know about it.
I haven't seen it. I've only seen the soft side of you. I haven't seen that scary side.
Well, I'm a nice person when we're interacting, but mate, you see him on coaching field. Well, last night we had one of the guys didn't come to gym last night. And he actually mentioned to me previously that he can't make it because of uni or whatever. But in that he needs to come contact me and ask me for the program. each week. And then he did it for the first couple of weeks. And then this week he didn't. And I saw him on Thursday at training. I went to him and I said, "Oh, are you going to gym before or after training today?" And he goes, "Oh, I did gym yesterday at Revo." I'm like, "Which gym did you do? Which program?" And he's like, "Oh," he like all froze. I'm like, "Did he message me about the program?" And he's like, "Oh," and like he'll like, and I just walked off. So I just like turned around, well, because you didn't meet the expectations. So I didn't yell at him, just kind of was like a conversation like this, walked off. And then probably would have been 10, 15 minutes later, he came up to me and goes, "Oh, like, sorry, I didn't message you about the program, whatever." I was like, "Mate, just need to send a reminder to me the night before, or tell me before I go on Tuesdays, because that's when I'll write the gym up on the program. You just have to do that. Like, I'm not asking for a lot." So I sent him, that's one way, just kind of, don't need to yell at him, but just so the standard is that you have to let me know if you're not going to make it and ask me for the program. If you want to do it in your own time, that's fine. But you have to make sure you're doing what the rest of the team and you have to do. You can't just go in with your brother and do arms and leg extensions. It's going to have to be what
biceps.
It's going to make you be the best out in the field, you know? It's one of those. You've had it well, it's not inspirational, but it's just something that a little bit of an insight into what I'm as like as a coach. Have you ever had anything experience like that before with a player?
I know, yeah, I guess sometimes the players would just like, you get a few people and they're like, "I just don't want to do this." And it's like, well, like, why?
You have a choice.
It's like, "Oh, I don't believe in doing leg exercises." Like, it's like, why don't you believe in doing leg exercises? And you've got to sit there and like, you've got to explain to them. And then I guess like, you've got to put the best sort of, I guess, not just like your opinion, but like the facts forward. And it's like, well, if we do this, this can help with this. And like, you get like, especially like Nordics, it's like, "Oh, why do we have to do Nordics?" And then you sort of explain to them and then they're like, "Oh, that makes sense then." Like, but yeah.
Do you want to be out injured with hammies for 4 weeks? No, we'll do Nordics.
Yeah, that's what I said. Like, you tell them and you're like, "Oh, so it does this, which helps this." And then they're like, there's a few of them and they're just like, "Oh, whatever." But some of them like then like switch on and they're like, "Oh, like I didn't realise." And it's like, "Oh, that's why you do Nordics." And then they're like, "Oh, okay, we're doing Nordics."
That league. So after you finished off that, you went to July. You finished off under Lockie for that year, and then the women's came in the year after in 2018.
They came in at.
It was 2019.
It would have been. I don't even know what year it was. Would have been it was the end of that season.
Yeah. So then
like October.
Yeah. So the women's, then you took over S&C. There were your assistant there as well.
Sort of co-did it with Lockie.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of like.
You looked after a little bit.
I sort of was the face of it all, but he helped. Like,
yeah, the mentoring side.
Yeah, and obviously, like, I was pretty fresh. I didn't have a lot of confidence back then. I was like, holy shit, like, where do I? But then, so he sort of co-did it until he went to India.
Yep.
And then I was chucked in the deep end and had 3-4 weeks, but I was running, I had to manage the league reserves and women's all by myself.
So how did you kind of get over the hump of, like, not having the confidence to stand, I assume not having the confidence to stand in front of the group and to present what you needed to do from a S&C kind of view? Where was that kind of bridging point that you were like, went from not having it to just going and...
I don't know, I think there wasn't really...
Just clicked all at once?
Yeah, I think you just didn't get a choice. You just had to do it. It wasn't like a point where you had to sit there and be like, "Oh, today I'm going to like take steps." I think like one day it was just like, "Oh, today you got to take like I'm not going to be at training today. You're going to have to take warm up." It's like, okay, well, that was just sort of it. And then
did you take a leaf? Like, did you kind of trying to copy or trying to mimic what Lockie did as a coach, or were you kind of a bit separate? Like you did your own, not spin on it, but you're your own coach.
I think at that point I didn't know enough to sit there and have my own spin on anything yet. Like I didn't really have too much of an idea of
who you were as a coach,
who I was as a coach. I sort of tried to mimic him as probably best as possible, especially in terms where you've got like you want to keep it pretty consistent. You don't want to change things up too much anyway. And then had like little bits and pieces where like maybe some exercise that I learned like over in the US for like warm-ups and stuff. But for the most part, it was all pretty consistent as well. Like the warm-ups that they did over there and then here, and then it sort of all blended together anyway. So it wasn't...
Same but different.
Yeah. So it wasn't like... But yeah, I think pretty much just wanted to mimic or just sort of expand on that rather than... Yeah, I didn't really have too much of an idea at that point. And looking back then I was like, oh... I think I've got some idea, but now I look back and I'm like, nah, I had no idea. But And then that slowly just like, I know when he left to India, that like 3 or 4 weeks is sort of, that was sort of like the first point where it's like, well, what do I do now? Because like there was like a change in gym program, like managing loads and running. And I remember there was like one session, we had like a camp, and I was like, the camp, we went like way over, we did like a shit ton of kilometres and like...
Yeah, and way overboard.
I was like, holy shit, I was like, what do we do here? Because it was like, just like a massive spike, and it's like, shit, like...
What do you do? How do you kind of come back?
Yeah, it's like...
Or pull it back, or kind of
and then
program off from that, yeah.
And then because we had such a big week, then he's like, and the camp over the weekend, then he's like, oh, we'll just have like Monday off. And I was like, oh, that's just like massive spike up, massive spike down. So it's just sort of... So I think, but then I think...
So what were the repercussions from that? So you had the week, that next session off, and then what happened after that?
I think that was sort of a point where it wasn't complete. I think I'm fairly sure we might have programmed like a little run to do at home, but not like come in and do a massive session. But I think that was another thing, like coming in is you realise that like you can't do everything by the books, and like it's not in your control. Like you think a lot of times you're like, oh, you can do it all perfectly, and it's like, nah, sometimes there's actual things, and you might have a spike. Like I know that's one thing, especially now, since COVID and stuff, but sometimes like you're going to have a massive spike and you just got to sort of like cop it on the chin. There's not too much you can do, and you're just going to manage it from there rather than try and like minuscule, like control everything too much. And like that's
the biggest, like that's what science is about, controlling everything. But that's why sports science is termed like dirty science, because nothing is really ever controlled in an environment where you can be 100% sure that that's happened.
Yeah,
there's always going to be like, in terms of like GPS data, there's always going to be error in the measures that you're going to get out of the data, and in terms of the RPEs they're going to go about, there's going to be error, and there's all these error compound into a fact, well, can you trust everything? That's where you're going to have lots of little different managing tools and evaluations that you can go across in a week or in that session to be like, oh, we can be confident in saying that that this person might need to take or have a lighter session, or we might actually need to do a little bit more because we're not at the level that we need to be at, and that sort of stuff. So what's kind of been, so you took over from the women and you kind of learning who you are as a coach, and that was how many, two years ago?
Yeah.
So where you are now, looking back at that person now, where do you think the biggest changes are as a coach?
I think my knowledge is a huge thing, and experience. Like I've just learned a lot more than and obviously coming in as a fresh, like uni doesn't really prepare you, like, and coming, like a lot of people don't really realise, especially if you don't know what you want to do, you're not going to have a huge experience coaching when you go in anyway. So that like
just being in the game more.
Yeah. So I guess that's one, like probably the huge part, but just confidence. And I was looking back now, I was probably a lot shyer and stuff, and just trying to build that rapport with athletes. And I think that comes as well. But yeah, I think like the hugest, like biggest change is just like the amount I've learned, and even not so probably much more so, more through experience and
that makes sense.
Adaptable, I guess. Being able to adapt, because I'm a pretty, like I know, just in life, I like the things like be nice and like routine and consistent, and just like, especially since COVID now, you've got games and working with the W League now, travelling interstate, and then like you might have 8-day break one day, and then you've got a 4-day break, and you've got to travel all in like within 4 days since the last game, and just looking at that aspect, I guess you've got to realise, I think great man Boobs told me once, you've got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So yeah, I think that's one thing I'm learning now, is just like, especially like those times where you have all of these things out of your control, is just being comfortable with what you're doing, rather than like freaking out and be like, oh shit, so we're gonna like mess up.
Was there any element of self-doubt at all in that journey, or that process?
Yeah, there's been a few times where I'm like, shit, is this what, like, I've always known it's what I wanted to do, but there's been like a few times where I'm like, holy shit, like how am I going to do this? Especially, I guess, when this COVID stuff happened, there wasn't much coaching going on. I was like, I didn't really have my foot in too much at that point. And I was like, where's the next step, I guess? And there's a lot of doubt there, because you're like, what if I don't find somewhere? Like, am I going to, like, but yeah, lucky to work that out. So.
Was that a challenging time, that period over the COVID break, or was it been other challenges throughout the time that have kind of superseded that? Or
So I was pretty lucky to blend when I left Eagles to go to Adelaide United, the W League. That blend pretty seamlessly because I was already doing placement there when I left. So I was doing the two at once. Because uni, obviously you can't get paid for placement. I was getting paid at Eagles, so they're like, you can't use this. And sort of a lot of the time I was my own, there was no one supervising me anyway. So I was like, I can't really sign myself off. It's like, me.
You started off.
So I had to go there anyway. But yeah, then just that blended in and just sort of took over there. And then I was pretty lucky to get asked to come back and help. And then
at the Adelaide United W League.
But our season pretty much ended, like literally ended spot on when the COVID stuff started. So even though it was off season, regardless, it was still that time where you sort of
sat back and did not much.
Not much, no. There was bits and pieces, like you can talk to people, you can do your own workout, that sort of stuff. But yeah, sort of looking back now, it's all gone really quickly.
Did you, when you came back from the COVID break, back into coaching, did you find yourself rusty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was one big thing I had to, I was trying to get some work and like trying to make a good impression, and you just like, you haven't coached in 6 months and you're just like,
kind of a bit sloppy,
I guess a bit frantic in a way.
So you talk about impressions, that sort of stuff. For your first kind of coaching with the W League, what was the difference between setting your mark as a coach there, being when you were working with the women at the Woodville?
To be fair, like even though it's the top level in, like you think top level in Australian soccer, it's probably a lot more relaxed, a lot more chilled out than like, it's probably, it's pretty, and like even you go to some of the men's sessions and stuff and it's all really relaxed. Like it's probably pretty similar to SANFL, just the vibes and stuff. Like it's not like you're not going to somewhere and it's really strict and professional. Like even though it is, it's still that like.
And that reflects in your coaching as well. Like you're not super on top of everyone or.
Yeah, and I guess when you get to that level as well, a lot of people, for the most part, you've got people that have been doing this for quite a long time. Your coaching sort of drops to the amount you have to coach drops. So if you got someone in the gym and they're doing stuff pretty spot on, like you don't really have to coach as much, and they're probably at a stage where they don't want you on their back watching and making sure they're doing everything right. But
that makes a lot of sense.
So you sort of,
I don't think your coaching drops off. I think that's probably not the right term, but maybe you don't have to ride their back as much in terms of their they kind of know what you expect from them. Then therefore you don't have to ride their backs more. Like the coaching comes from like refinements in technique if they need anything and that sort of stuff. So that makes a lot of sense.
You're just more like monitoring what they're doing and stuff. Like going to the gym and stuff, they're all pretty switched on. They know what they're doing. You don't really have to. You might have to give them cues and stuff occasionally, but whereas when you're teaching girls never been in the gym in their life before, that's probably like the main difference. But the rest of it's pretty like you're sort of the same person regardless. You're not gonna like you adapt to the situations, but you're still the same. So
with your role now at the Adelaide United Women's, what's kind of your key responsibilities now as an assistant coach? Is that right?
So assistant S&C.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty like I don't think there's like Eleni likes to say there's not too much. We're on the same level. Like there's no sort of like hierarchy and like she's a head S&C so she gets more respect or anything in that sort of sense. The only real difference is that she probably just monitors, like does the GPS work and
a bit more behind the scenes.
But coaching wise, like it's pretty even. Like
gym sessions.
It's just me and her usually. So we've got most of the girls in the gym at Sassy, and then she might be doing one thing, and then I'll be like taking the rest of the girls. Or that's another thing, like warm ups and stuff. Like a lot of the time now, I'll just take them. Like I'll take the warm ups, I'll do their sprints and stuff, and then it's just sort of like rotating. It's like, oh, do you feel like do you want to, like, who's sort of better on the day, what sort of energy you want to bring and stuff. So if she might have had a long day, a bit fatigued and stuff, so you're like, I'm feeling great, I'm happy to run around with them and that sort of thing. So in that regard, like, it's pretty even. And then, I guess building that slowly, like, just building that rapport with the coaches and stuff where you can sort of put your input in and what you think as well.
Mm-hmm.
So to begin with, the coaches aren't going to go to you for advice. Like if you see a player and it's like, oh, what do you think about this player's performance and stuff, they're not really going to go to you. But now, starting to get to that point where the coach is going to be like, well, what do you think of this situation? And
Are the coaches there, are they kind of, I don't know what word, are they kind of brought into the S&C? Because a lot of soccer, football kind of code, they're not really big into S&C, but are they kind of...
It's sort of...
Support it?
Yeah, they support it. It's sort of just like, that's your expertise. You sort of... but that's one thing that's sort of been, I guess, a little bit tricky going in as a placement student is sort of, you don't give the coaches your resume and be like, this is what I've done before. Like, I actually do have a bit of experience. And then you stayed on after that. Yeah, so you sort of come in as a student, and I think they sort of just assume that that's your first experience, and it's like, oh, you've come in as a student, you're just a student. Or it's like, oh, I was actually, like, working for 2 years prior, technically, before
just so there was a little bit of a trust kind of barrier there, a little bit.
I think, just building up that the fact that I, was already a coach, sort of, because we have students come in now, and they've, nothing. They're
less than when you were.
Yeah, so that was, I was. So that's, me teaching them now and stuff. And, I like talking about my experiences to them and stuff and teaching them. But with the coaches, they just sort of assume you've come in as a student.
Fresh. And you're not,
but it's like, oh, well, I actually. But they don't know, and it's sort of not there. Even though sort of in a way they should know, but it's not like they need to sort of look at your resume and be like, this is what you've done before. And they're not the ones that are talking to you and organising your placement. You work with the S&C and the sports scientists and stuff. So it's not like... they don't really care too much about who comes in placement and that sort of stuff anyway. But
so, taking away the fact that you've worked with men and women at SANFL, and then you're working with women in the soccer, football in Adelaide, what are the kind of the biggest differences between the two sports? Like in terms of what you've got to focus on as a coach, what warm-ups, you have to do anything different for soccer players than you would footy, or for footy than for soccer? Or
I feel like there wasn't one thing that sort of... There's a bigger emphasis. I don't know what it is for other teams and other S&C, but there was not much of an emphasis on groin. A lot of emphasis
in footy.
In footy,
yep.
A lot of emphasis on groins in soccer.
Yep.
So groins are a huge thing. Make sure groins are warmed up. But everything else is
relatively the same.
Relatively the same. I think just a sort of, I guess they go a bit harder at training and stuff. They're a little less conservative. That's another thing is injuries and stuff. Their coach gets final say. If coach is like, oh, they've done a hamstring 1 week ago, it's like, well, coach wants you to play. You're the best player on the team. You're going to play. We're just going to do as best we can to get you back. Even if the physio and everyone says
and this is in soccer.
It's in soccer, but I think the coaches now are getting better now that they're learning a bit more educated and stuff. But I guess from what I've heard, some of the older coaches, the ones that have just purely coached without any science and stuff, they don't really realise that there's a bit to... so you could have an injury and stuff and they'd be like, oh, well, we're just going to make you play regardless. And then if the physio, it's the coach's final say. So even S&C and physio no, they're not ready to play, but the coach is we need them, they'll play.
And also, you were showing me before the GPS data, in terms of total game distances.
Yeah.
It blew me out of the water how much the soccer run more than run more in a game than AFL or SANFL equivalent. If you're comparing, you're showing me the data from the women's soccer team, and I was kind of looking in my head thinking what our guys do in a game of footy.
Yeah,
it was almost the same.
Yeah,
it's quite different. Because if you're going to compare W League data, GPS data to Waffle W. GPS data, it'd be incomparable. Women won't run it. Women, I think when I recorded data last year, our girls are running about 8Ks in a game of footy compared to what W League girls are. You were showing me average was about 10.5.
Yeah, so average,
and their high speeds was out the window.
So average is 10.5, and I'm not sure, could be. So that's for girls that play 90 minutes, and those 10.5 come from players that are maybe a centre back or something, or one of those. Oh, maybe not centre back, but maybe a striker or something. So that's the less running positions, but then you have the players Some of the midfielders, the wingers, fullbacks, they're running up and down, and they might do like 6Ks and a half, which is like 45 minutes. So whatever that works out to be.
Wow.
But there's one girl, and she gets like, it's a bit different, but she might get like 300-400 meters a half of over 21Ks in just a half. So it's like, for females, it's pretty.
That's not, yeah, so they don't even run. Also, I think because as well, the W League is a bit more established than like a Waffle W.
Yeah.
As well, so they kind of have an understanding of how hard they kind of need to train and work for to be competitive. Like you were saying, the weeks they're totaling up to almost 28Ks a week. Is that correct?
Some weeks, yeah. So I was looking at some of the data the other day. So we've had weeks like in season where we get up to like 20Ks in a week in season. Probably average 24 to 26 in season. So they do quite a high load, but they manage it pretty well. And it's sort of, they do that like it's just consistently, which it's also hard because we've got girls coming from overseas. You've got international players, you've got national level players, like you've got girls that are in the Matildas, like future Matildas. You've got people, we've got a girl that plays, she was on the national Chile team. So she's...
Chile?
Yeah, she's from Chile.
And then she's playing soccer?
She plays Chile, yeah.
Yeah, but like that's crazy kind of, she's chilling and then as well as soccer on top of that.
What do you mean?
You're saying she come from cheerleading and now she's soccer?
Chile.
Well, Chile. Oh, sorry, I thought you said cheerleading.
No, Chile.
Sorry,
like the country, Chile.
Yeah, right.
So she was like on the national Chilean team. It was Chilean? Chile?
Oh, there you go. Chilean and cheerleading.
No, Chile, the South American country.
My apologies. Anyway.
So we've got quite a few international players, so we get them tipped over for the season. But then there's some girls go play back in state league and stuff but the season's pretty short and their pre-season's like tiny. Like their pre-season, especially this COVID changed it a bit, but we started pre-season late November, I think.
And first game was?
1st of January, 2nd of January.
Wow.
We had like
2 months.
Maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks of pre-season. So you've gone, yeah.
So you obviously would have to take in some pretty big jumps in training load and to get them ready for games. Would you kind of have any kind of injury, like large injury setbacks along the way, or was it kind of a steady build up?
I'm pretty impressed. Like, I know working like in footy, you'd have like even as much as you try and like prevent injuries, you'd still get quite a few injuries. I'm not sure if that's, I guess the sample size is a lot smaller. Like we have 20 girls in the training squad, whereas the boys you might have like 60. So I'm not sure if the size matters, but we don't usually, touch wood, get many injuries in that sense. And like even during pre-season and stuff, you might have little niggles, but there hasn't been anything too ankles maybe. Like maybe a couple ankles. Maybe I think there was like...
But in terms of soft tissue, there wasn't...
There was maybe three or four soft tissues since pre-season.
Wow.
So I'm not sure,
That's crazy. Because, I mean, like you're saying, that some international players and some higher level soccer players and that, so they do have a higher training base than what some...
Well, we had a girl come from Norway. She missed the first round. She was in quarantine for Christmas and New Year's, hotel quarantine. Come out, trained for like 3 days, and then played a game and playing since.
And no issues, she brought sore?
Sore, yeah. So we noticed the girls that have come out of quarantine, their hamstrings and hip flexors have been pretty tight, like just tight. Just more like uncomfortable rather than like sore.
But they have no soft tissues throughout the year with those that...
So one of the girl did a hamstring, but that was quite a bit after she came out of quarantine. So
how long after?
Probably 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
So it was a fairly I don't think it could have, but maybe not. But yeah, she had, one of the girls had a treadmill in quarantine, I think. But like obviously got stuck running at 15 k's an hour, was it like max, and just ran at that. And then the other girl had a bike.
Which is nothing.
So yeah, some of them get assault bikes.
Where do they get all the equipment from?
I don't know. I think they just there was one in Sydney, so I think they just found some gym in Sydney and then they just sort of source them wherever. But I know one of the men's players, he got stuck in hotel quarantine for 2 weeks just with an assault bike. Well,
that's tough.
This is like best friend now.
The assault bike.
Yeah.
Mate, those things are the worst. I call them the devil's hamster wheel. It's so bad.
You would imagine
so
waking
painful.
up every morning in your hotel, just in your bed, you've got this assault bike wake up, just hello,
So
jump on.
like just hours and hours in that thing.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, that's another thing. Like some of the girls sacrifice like so much just to get over here to play. Is like you sort of forget they've like literally just like sat in a hotel quarantine like 2 weeks and to play like we have 14 rounds. I think we play 12 games.
Mm-hmm.
So they've literally like come over, sat in a hotel for 2 weeks, missed out on Christmas, missed out on New Year's, like sat by themselves in a hotel, then play like 14 rounds and just go home. And it's just like their livelihood. It's just a bit. They travel all over the world. We had our captain go to Sweden last week. So that's another thing that's weird about soccer as well is you just like...
The national duties. Did you have national? Was that why she went back to Sweden?
No, she got offered a contract. They paid the transfer fee to send her over.
Oh, she's actually playing for a different club over in Sweden.
Yeah, but yeah, that's another bit weird thing about soccer is you like don't get drafted and contracted. You like sign, and you might sign for the season, but once you like signs over, you're like a free agent. You can just go anywhere, and then like if a club wants you, they just buy you from the other club.
So she wasn't contracted.
She was contracted. She was captain. So then they said, nah, you can wait till like the end of the season, which is like to leave. Yeah. Wait till and they're like, no, we want to now. We're gonna pay you. I don't know how much. And they're like, we'll pay you this much money to release her from her contract. And then within a week, she's jumped on a plane and gone over there.
Wow.
But that's like a common thing in soccer.
So they paid out a contract.
Yeah, so sometimes they won't bother. Like sometimes they're like...
Yeah, but obviously she was good enough for them to do that.
Yeah. So she's been in Adelaide her whole life. Like she's grown up here, never played like overseas or anything, I don't think. And yeah, got this after this in the best Swedish team. Top team in Sweden, which is her season. Like yeah, she'd be on like for a female soccer player, she'd be on a good amount of money and elite program. Wouldn't have to worry like living the life, I guess. But yeah, that's another thing about soccer is like one day you could be in like one team and next day another team just like calls you up and it's like, hey, do you want to come over? And it's like, all right, see, I'm just going to change teams. Like, there's no like draft system where you sit there and.
Soccer is interesting.
Yeah, it's weird.
Different dynamic, eh?
That's what I thought was weird. Like once you turn like 18, there's no like draft. It's like time to like
get
picked.
Yeah.
You can just like be chilling one day and next in a phone call. It's like you've signed to Adelaide United now, and like you just might sign for like 3 games.
Trial basis, yeah.
Like they might be like, we only need you for the next 3 weeks. So we're gonna have a 3-week contract, and then you're like off contract again. So yeah, it's like so.
Do you find soccer a bit more enjoyable? Because obviously you have a bit more responsibility now. But do you find you prefer footy or soccer or any other sport?
So, one thing I would love to get into is cricket.
Mm-hmm. Why is that?
It's just the dynamics. I guess, like, looking at all the biomechanics of it, I'm more, like, really interested in that. And then there's just so many different positions, different training style. And one thing I get, like, I just find it so intriguing that they play, like, 5 days in a row. It's just, like, how do you prepare for, like, a 5-day match? But, yeah.
So that the biomechanics is the bowling that...
Yeah. Just looking at...
generate the force that they have to generate off the crease and how strong, in the sense they have to be to withstand...
You just like watch how much like force goes through their foot when they bowl to begin with, and you're
for
like,
the front leg and the shoulder, the arm, the elbow, the wrist,
and then just do that like back to back to back to back to back, and the speed they're going at is like 150 k's an hour sometimes. It's just to generate that force over and over and over again, and then just like mentally, like you're standing there out from whatever time in the morning to like late afternoon, night. You're standing there switched on. You can't just like fall asleep.
Yeah, that's probably what the biggest thing would tax as well. Like it wouldn't be like, it's not, but if you're a bowler, like it's physically taxing. But if you're a fielder as well, like it's if you don't have the mental capacity to stay on and like turn off, turn on, turn off, turn off, then it takes a toll on you physically.
Yeah.
And like you might just you're slow, sluggish, while you're out in the field, and that like obviously it's not the best for your team if you're out there and you're not.
But like a wicket keeper, you just sit there behind the stumps like the whole time. You're just gonna like make sure, like if you miss a ball and it goes over for like a 4 or something when you should have caught it, like you're in shit.
Yeah, you have to be able to maintain explosiveness as well if you're a keeper.
That's like goalkeeper.
Stay low, get across.
Yeah.
Goalkeepers as well.
Goalkeepers.
Do they train differently? Goalkeepers.
Goalkeepers train separately to the team.
Really?
So they'll do like gym and stuff together.
Yeah.
But we have a goalkeepers coach, and like the whole squad comes over.
Yep.
Like we do a warm up together, and the goalkeepers. Once the warm-up's over, the goalkeepers go into their little goals and they just sit in the goals for the whole training.
What about, do you have like match sim stuff that they get involved in?
So then it might be like, if we have a match sim, then they might just do like goalkeeping at the end. But if we're not doing any like gameplay, they'll just like sit there in the goals the whole time and just like practice catching shots for like a whole like 60, 70 minutes sometimes.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy. But yeah, that's one thing. I had never ever watched a game of soccer in my life until I started at Adelaide United.
Really?
So I started January last year, and my first ever game was the women's game I went to. I like never watched a game of soccer in my life, like not even like a bit. I was like, had no idea. I didn't even know the rules, to be honest with you. And then so I went to the women's game, obviously, when I started like doing placement there, and then stayed on board and like watched the games and stuff. And then I've still like coming up to this season, I'd never watched a men's game, like no like EPL, no A-League, no nothing. And then we get like tickets to the men's, obviously, and then went to a men's game and I was like, oh, I've reached the ripe age of 22 and now decided it's a good time to, which I do think it's very underrated. Like I do, like even though I haven't watched it and I might have like trashed it a little bit and been like, oh, soccer's boring. Like once you sort of work in the sport and see what goes behind it and like understand the sport a little bit more, you're like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. But
do you find a difference between working with women and men, and what are the biggest differences?
So I feel one thing, probably it depends who you work with. One thing about working with women is sometimes being a young female as well, it sort of has its pros and cons, because sometimes I guess they think you're like another one of them. Like there's quite a few like maybe like 19-year-olds and stuff, and they might pretty fresh into the program and they see this like person similar to their age that's sort of like a mentor friend sort of thing. So I think one thing that's sort of, you got to say like professional, you like you're their friend but not their friend, like be friendly but you're not like their bestie, you don't go out with them and that sort of stuff. So just like keeping on those terms, and like you don't want to sort of burn bridges in that sense where it's like, oh, like we can't be friends, but you've got to maintain like the professional relationship between like coach and athlete. I feel like you don't have as much as that with the men. They sort of like just like treat you as a coach. But yeah, I know a lot of the young females sometimes will try and like, yeah, it's just sort of like maintaining that and trying not to cross boundaries.
Get a bit
and, like,
too friendly with that, yeah.
Get too friendly. But like at the same time, they're like the loveliest people. So it's sort of like hard to like...
I always try to... There's like always a bit more emotion involved with women just because it's a bit more open. They express themselves more freely. So it's like game day, you can... Like the nerves that come out, they're like dancing around and this sort of stuff. And guys are a little bit more to stay withdrawn. The headphones are on. Kind of stay away from everyone. I'll call it everyone's different, but they're kind of the biggest things that I've taken away working with men and male and female. Yeah,
I guess they're all pretty... Our girls are pretty good. They're all like... They gel really well as well. We don't really have any like issues and stuff. There's no drama, which is really nice, because that's like one thing you think about women's like all the like friend like clickiness, but now they're all really, really good, which is good. But yeah, I guess that sometimes you like...
Do they have a strong leadership group? Like, is it the whole...
Our captain was amazing before she went to Sweden. So she was really good and held it all together really well.
Do you find that that'll be a big challenge now for the group to kind of hold?
Another girl's taken over captaincy, and she's really good as well. She's one of the older players. She's from America, full-time soccer player from the US. So she's come over here, but she's like really switched on, really professional, very, very, very talented. So I think that should be good in that sense. But the leadership, sort of, they have a good culture. They all sort of...
That's good.
Respect each other, and they've been a team long enough now that they all sort of know the ins and outs. They're not like... There's no really... Yeah, they're all pretty equal, I guess.
That's good. In terms of what are kind of the biggest... Or not the biggest, but like your key kind of data? Do you take much data in terms of like wellness, RPEs? Obviously have GPS. What are kind of stuff that you're keeping?
So they have... It's the Lumen app. So they've got the Lumen app. They'll do their wellness. We have to do COVID every day. Yep. So it's like a requirement. You have to make sure you've got no COVID symptoms every day and like submit it off to the FFA.
Yep.
You're like, no, they don't have COVID today. And then wellness. So you've got your like stress, your mood, your energy, sleep. So you monitor all of that, especially when you're full-time athletes as such, professional athletes. You want to make sure like a little bit of stress can go like a long way in terms of performance. So we monitor all of that. Then also their menstrual cycle. So the S&C is pretty big on that.
And how that affects training.
Yeah, so we have like a couple girls with like endometriosis. So then you've got, like, if they're having a flare up and stuff, you've got to obviously manage that and treat that how it comes. Cramps and stuff are a big thing. So girls like have days where you would like obviously might need to go a bit easier and stuff, but then sometimes I think there's a bit of relationship to certain parts of the cycle to where they're like
to train them hard and pull back.
Yeah, so but I guess that's one thing that's hard is a team sport. You've got people all through their site, like you can't like, and when you're on a strict sort of schedule, you can't really like pick and choose. Like today, we're going to train this person hard, but this person's not going to train hard today, and this person's not going to train at all today. Like, so it's pretty like, even though it's great to have to monitor in that sense, it's sort of, I feel like you can't really tailor the program to individualize as a team. Gym and stuff you can.
Yeah.
But, overall, like team training, I think is a bit hard. I think it's more of a marker. If something happens, like a soft tissue injury, and then you can look at their menstrual cycle and be like, oh, well, this is sort of linked up, and there's research that suggests this, like, part of the cycle relate to this, or they have a really like good game, and then it's sort of just that knowledge. But we have a girl doing an honours project on it at the moment, so
really
a lot of it's for her data. But yeah, besides GPS, we do RPE every session, and then just the wellness stuff. So it's not.
And you kind of blend it all. You have a look at it all together and make decisions based off that. You don't kind of look at one higher than the other in terms of like a metric to look at.
RPE is a pretty big thing. Load's a bit hard because we don't have live GPS, so there's not as much as you want to be able to control it. Like you can set targets and stuff, but if you don't have live GPS, you don't really know. You can't really be like, oh, we're well over now, and like you could blow it out and not realise as such. So there's only so much control you have of that. And then I like RPE because it's like subjective. Like there's days where like the predicted RPE, the session might do a same session, and last week it was a 3 and this week it's a 5. So I like it in that sense where you can, and then you can see, and then you ask them why, and then you can sort of relate it to then their wellness and be like, well, today you've got low energy, you've had a bad sleep, you've got some stress going on. But yeah, sort of all blends into one. But sometimes it's a bit hard to control, and it's sort of, you can take out what you want, put in what you want, but overall, like, I think you've just got to go with what works best. Like, you can't really, I think too much into it sometimes.
Yeah, and especially with the point you made before about the menstrual cycle, when saying, like, if you've got to train as a team, as a team sport, you train as a team, but then you've got, like, flare-ups of all this sort of stuff. Then you have to pull girls out, and, like, girls can only do this much training and pull girls out of this. It kind of disrupts the team dynamics or the chemistry you kind of have. But then, like, you kind of have to bit of understanding with the athlete. You're gonna have to train or do parts of training because it's what the team. You're gonna have to obviously, if you're gonna do like a work with the back, so you're gonna work some sort of game kind of drill. You're gonna have to work together, so you can't really not be involved. You have to be involved in some aspect. But then when it comes to a gym, and then there's times where you might be struggling in the gym. That's okay. You can kind of take it a bit lighter. You can do something else, but then when it's time to, you might have a point of the cycle where you're actually getting stronger, you have different hormones you're going through, and then it's time you can actually get some good gains if you actually go a little bit heavier. Yeah. There's times with that.
But I guess one thing as well is, like, you get to a game, like you can't... You
don't have a choice, no.
You don't have a choice. So, like, you might be able to, like, training, you can sort of, like, be a bit more lenient. But, like, if you've got a big game, you're one of the best players on the team, and you might be at a certain cycle, you can't be like, sorry, she's not playing because she's in this stage of a cycle. Like, it's a bit unrealistic sometimes, I guess.
So what do you know what the actual research is about? The person is, what's her name studying the research?
So the girl doing her honours, her name's Velvet, but she's only just started this project and doing it with our team. But I think there's little bits and pieces I can't think of the top of my head. But
it'd be interesting to see.
There was a presentation at the ASCA conference. Do you remember?
A couple of years ago, yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's a pretty new sort of field of studies and stuff to sort of get into, so it's all a bit, I guess, come and go. But then you've got like, I don't know if you understand this too much, but you've got girls on contraception and stuff. So you've got girls that are like all of that, and you've got girls that might not ever get their period. So it's like, how do you
manage everyone?
Yeah, so it's all a bit, but that's sort of not too much in my hands. So I'm like, just
take a step back and see how it involves. It's got an interesting kind of field of thought as well, because it's almost impossible to manage each person individually based off that.
One thing I've...
You make sure they're professional athletes, so they're going to have to work.
That's one thing I've always sort of like thought as well, is like, do you reckon, I know with like females, you have your hormones, they fluctuate through the month. Do you think like a similar thing would happen with men, where you have like a different levels of hormones, where like there might
Stress.
be... Because like...
Cortisol is a big one.
Yeah, like if you've got different... Like I know it's not the same, but do you think like men might have like different times of the month?
There's fluctuations, but it's not to an extent of a female.
Yeah.
But like the biggest one for guys is when cortisol goes through the roof. That's when testosterone is obviously the lowest. You can't have two.
Yeah.
You can't have testosterone high, cortisol high. They cancel each other out. So it's when there's a period of high stress and high training week, and they're not gonna recover as quickly because the load's so high, because the stress is high, cortisol's up, and then testosterone's down. So then gym's performance is affected because of that. And then when the load goes down, there's not so much stress, then testosterone comes back up. But then of course there's a lot of other things, like you start supplementing like vitamin D, all the stuff that's going to help with muscle remodeling, and taking creatine, taking vitamin D, vitamin D, what else was there? Creatine, those three, and then you got beetroot juice, pomegranates, all that sort of stuff that's going to help with remodeling of tissues. So that's going to help, and that helps with remodeling because he's helping with getting the testosterone back up. Sleeping, well, the easiest three without all that is like 8 hours of sleep, cold showers usually helps, a good protein in your diet, high fats, that's going to get your testosterone up. So that's why that will come back.
One of our assistant coaches is like a sleep doctor.
No, really?
So it's like huge on his sleep. He's like, get your sleep.
Yeah, get your sleep.
He's like PhD doctors and like sleep studies.
Does he have anything that they use? Like, because I use a Whoop strap, and that measures like my sleep, and has like different cycles of like, has like deep sleep, how long I sleep for, and how long I have REM, how long I'm light. Does he ever say what kind of, it's all individual based, or is it a bit more of
I'd have to look.
He doesn't really say. I
haven't asked him too many questions. Normally he's in like soccer mode. He's been at work all day. But yeah, it'd be something he has done like papers relevant with sport and stuff. So he does like all of that, which would be interesting to look in.
Because I know usually it's 50%. Like if you sleep for 6 hours, you kind of want 3 hours in deep and REM, and then another 3 hours light.
Yeah.
So it's kind of I use that time to track, because I train Muay Thai 4 times, gym 4 times, and then I'll do a couple of extra conditionings every now and again. But then if my recovery's down, like my heart rate variability, my resting heart rate, and then my sleep, if that's all out of whack, then my recovery is all low, then I won't do a session that day, or I might take it a bit easy.
Yeah.
So stuff like that I for myself, I can kind of keep myself in check. So sometimes if I might have a 53% recovery, but then I might train Muay Thai, and I might get a activity strain of like 12, and then I need to go to the gym after, and I'm like, but my route recommends that I don't go over a 10 for my daily training. I'm like, well, I kind of need to get my gym, because if I don't want to get, might only go over by 2 or 3 in my strain, but like that's not going to be a big deal. And they're like, sometimes you might want to push yourself a little bit further. You might want to have a couple of days where I go red line, but then when I go red, I'll just take back off that way. But when I'm in yellow, usually I'll push myself harder. But because I have that knowledge and I have the understanding of coaching and training, I know how to push through that a little bit. But guys who aren't knowledgeable in the fact, they might just see yellow and go, oh, I need to recover. Yeah. But then you don't ever get to the point where your body's going to adapt.
That's one thing that's hard as well with like our athletes, is that technically full-time professional athletes, but there's some of them that still, like, we have one girl and she's from England and she has to get like a visa to stay over here because she wants to live here. So she's went on an agriculture visa. I think the other week she did 60 hours in a potato shed sorting potatoes. So she does like 60 hours, then plays professional football on top of that.
Shit.
And then you've got girls, there's one girl, like there's a few girls that they'll literally like set an alarm in the morning at 9:55 to do their wellness and then go back to sleep for the rest of the day. Because the wellness has to be submitted by a certain time for the FFA, so they'll wake up and be like, nope, no COVID symptoms today, and then they'll just like set an alarm and then just go back to sleep and sleep for the rest of the day and then come to training. So you've got girls that like literally do nothing, and then there's like girls that there's one girl that's doing like 60-hour weeks just sorting potatoes.
Do you find that as well when it kind of gets to the point where you get to a point like in a pre-season where everyone, well, you're going to be sore, everyone's going to be sore, but then they start complaining that they're sore, we need to back load off. But the whole point of a bit of pre-season is to be sore and to keep upping the load. Like you want to get to a point where you don't want to break anyone, but you got to start to get to a point where you're kind of treading the line of soreness versus injury.
Yeah.
Because that, how do you kind of take that, or might not be directly your kind of line, but it might be something you've had to deal with before?
They're pretty good with it. Like,
we don't have many athletes.
They know, like, they know when they're sore, and it might be like, we might go like a little bit easier, but normally it like reflects each other. And if we do have a big session, normally have a day after the next day. Like, we'll have a big session leading to a day off, or like a 2-day off, rather than back to back to back. So you might, sort of like do it that way. But I think we were pretty good in the sense that the girls weren't too bad. Like, I know coming after the game, they played, that's one thing as well. The other day they went to, who are they playing, Sydney? Played Sydney in Sydney, and it was huge thing. We play on, like, obviously grass, but Sydney's pitch was turf.
Synthetic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've gone from playing grass the whole preseason, season, whatever, and then there's just like one game you're going to play on turf, and it's like completely like
different to what they've been.
Yeah. So there was like, they were quite sore after that. They requested the pickle juice. We had to get a box of pickle juice for them, like the cramps and all of that.
Was that for after that game, during the week after, or was it at the game?
The pickle juice?
Yeah.
Well, no, that they heard they were playing on turf. They're like, let's get a box of we need the pickle juice.
Oh, because they thought that it was already going to happen.
Yeah, they knew it was going to happen because we did training leading up, and the whole like surface is like, it's like hotter, like it's a lot grosser to play on, and they're like, we definitely need the pickle juice. So they like requested it before. They're like, we know we're going to cramp.
And did they?
I'm not sure. I don't think cramping was too bad, but soreness after the game, like
calves.
Yeah. They were like blowing up. Like after the game, they were just so, just like
because it's
harder surface, rubber, and the heat and stuff. And I think, I don't know, it might have been really like
any grass burns, any slides where they cut up.
Horrible grass burns. You see some of them, and they've literally got like no skin, like the whole like
because it's just,
leg, knee.
It's carpet, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah.
Synthetic pitch is like you just get carpet burn.
Because they had like one trial match, and the girl was like, there's more issue with like getting the turf burn. Goalkeepers.
Turf burn, yeah. Oh yeah, they're the one diving all the time, aren't they?
They have to wear their like long sleeve and stuff, and then, but yeah, the turf burn's horrible. It like literally, it's like, looks like you've been in like an accident or something and like grazed your whole.
Yuck.
And you can't not do anything about it. What are you going to do? Not go for the ball? Just be like, sorry, I don't want to get.
No, you can't be doing that if you're a professional soccer player. Backing out.
That's another thing as well. They're a lot tougher than you think. Like.
Soccer players?
Female soccer players.
Female soccer players. So not just females in general, just.
Well.
I think female athletes, from my experience with them, are a little bit tougher than I expected them to be.
Yeah.
Maybe that might be a little bit on my part of having a lower expectation. But when I had a little bit of a lower expectation. Then when I started working with them, I was like, no, I've got to set it higher. Like I set it, most of the girls I worked with that way, so I had way higher expectations from them. Just because they were, and then the guys I was working with in the men's hockey program, just because the women's just a little bit older, a bit more mature than the guys. The guys were a little bit younger, but these girls were in there, and there was kind of, they're in the last couple of years. Well, they've already been scholars for a couple of years, so they know what's expected of them. And I just wanted them to work and push themselves harder because why not? Like, you can do it. Like, there's improvement. You can always be better in some area of your game.
Well, that's like one thing I've seen. Like, we've come out, we're equal second at the moment, and this is the best season. They've never, in the whole W League, Adelaide United's W League life thing, they've never won this many games in a season. They've like broken so many records, and I'm like, you're watching them and you're like, they can still do better. Like, they might be like you can see it in them. Like, but yeah, it's like, you hear a lot of people saying like soccer players are soft and stuff, and then like they fall over, but like the girls, like they smash each other. It was like,
there's more physical contact than people think.
Yeah, and I found out that some of the reason they actually like lay on the ground is to waste time, not because they actually hurt.
I'll give it a rest.
Yeah, so if you're up
behind or if you're in front.
If you're in front, you need to waste time. You just like act injured and lay on the ground, and then you can get like a physio to come out and it pauses more time, and then like, because you're in front and you're holding the ball, you don't want to have to sit there and like run.
That's so crazy.
So you just like act.
You would think if it's so open like that, there'd be like a rule about it, like time wasting and stuff like that.
There is a little bit, like the goalkeepers, you get 6 seconds once you like get the ball.
Oh, before you pass?
Before you like throw it past. You've got a time limit for that. But then like the refs, like you hear them on the sideline and they're like, you've got shin guards for a reason, get up, like yelling at them and stuff.
Oh,
like,
really?
but they're like allowed to take it. But yeah, there's actual like a tactical, I know from the girls, I don't know about the guys if they are genuinely hurt or not. You see some of them on TV and they're like acting like they're...
Yeah, some of them is a little bit fishy. You don't want to say, oh, you're not hurt or whatever, but some of it looks a little bit...
Nah, but yeah, the girls will after, you like ask them, they'll be like, nah, there was like 5 minutes left of the game, we were up, we needed to waste time, so you just like lay on the ground and...
A bit of a rest.
Just pretend you're cramping. Just having like, sorry, my calf hurts, and then they have to stop play, and then... But...
Shit.
Then they add on, like, if it's the add-on time anyway. You have injury time and the add-on time. Last week we had 8 minutes of extra play. The girls, some of the girls played 99 minutes. That's why we got 12 Ks. But, yeah, so it's not all. There is a little bit of tactical on those fake injuries.
There you go. I never would have thought that before.
So, you're up. Just say you're 2-0 up. You don't have long to go and you need to, like, waste time, or you need to get, like, you either foul them or something or do something. Just waste the time, stop the play so you can, like, reset and stuff. And I was like... It's actually a lot smarter than you think.
It is pretty smart. So how did you... So before we finish up, was my last question. Pretty obvious, got to ask this one. What? Don't look at me like that. How do you find being female in a male-dominated industry?
So I see, personally, like I have grown up, obviously in the country. I'm very like close to my dad and like male cousins and stuff. So for me, I've always sort of been like, and I've always got along better with guys and girls. Like I just find it so much easier. Like I have lots more guy friends and stuff. So I find it very easy. But I have seen girls that find it tough. Like any criticism, any like disrespect, any guy, like any of that, and they like crumble. But I think that's where I thrive better, is in that sense with like coaching with men. But I think there's times where, especially there might be some coaches and stuff that you're a young female, like especially when I started, 19 years old, female in a place where everyone's older than you, everyone's more experienced than you, and you've got to try and like prove yourself. And if you're a male, I think you get like, I know people don't say that, but there's like that easier little bit of connection in a way. But I think I've done all right for myself in that sense. Like it's been challenging at times, but I don't think it's impacted, and I don't think like I'm further than some males I've done. Like I've worked with some males and I've sort of in a better position. I don't want to say better position, but I've done pretty well for myself in that sense.
Whereas, what was it? So it was just the fact that you grew up a lot around guys. Yeah, you kind of saw. Is there anything in particular you can nail in to be like, this what helped me? Just kind of trying to get along a bit more, or a bit more of a communication with guys. We're just more open.
I think you just got to be open. You've just got to like, and I think one thing is if you act like it's an issue, it's going to be an issue. But if you just like, learnt to be pretty chilled out and carefree with stuff. So if you just treat everyone like everyone else, I think you should get that in return. Like if you have a bit of banter with them and don't act scared of them and that sort of stuff, then you don't really have an issue. But yeah,
laugh more.
Yeah, laugh more. I think the harder ones are coaches. The players not so bad, but
yeah,
like
that's what I mean. Yeah, the coaching is the hardest.
The coaching, especially against like when you've got maybe not male S&C, but male like football coaches and that sort of stuff is just sort of, and you're working with like some of the coaches have been coaching longer than you've been alive, so it's sort of that sense. Sometimes you like have to sit there and be like, oh shit, like. But I think you just sort of got to.
Do you find it now that it's easier for female coaches or females to get into coaching? Do you think it's more accessible that way now?
I think one thing that sort of bothers me is always females are expected to coach females. So I've always been told, oh, you can do AFLW, or oh, you can do women's this, and it's like, well, maybe like I want to. So I think sometimes people try and push females into the female sports and male into the male sports.
It shouldn't be like that.
No, it shouldn't be like that. But I think
should just be the best person available to do that job should take it, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it's one thing. Sometimes I think, and that's another thing. Sometimes people think being like if you go into like the AFLW stream, it's an easier stream to get in or a foot in the door. It's like, oh, if I've got enough experience, or maybe I want to go for the men's. But I think it's getting there. Like, it's pretty good. Can't say I've worked with too many female S&Cs, but I see a lot of female S&Cs in Adelaide now that are pretty high up. There's one high performance manager for Norwood, is a female. But I think it's just a matter of proving yourself. If you're obviously in a industry where there's a lot more males than females, you've probably, like I said before, there's a bigger sample size. You've got more to choose from. And it just, I don't think it's a matter of female or male. It's just who's got the more experience, better personality, coaching wise and stuff. So
what could a female coach do to better prepare themselves to be in a male environment? Is there anything they can do?
I think it's just about one thing. A huge thing is confidence. If you don't act confident, you don't look confident. Like, if you act coming and looking timid, and then not really having a huge deal of experience behind you and that sort of stuff, you're gonna. But you see that with men. I've had students come in, male students, and they're very, very shy and timid, and I'm like, well, you need to open up a bit more. You need to ask questions. You need to look around and stuff. You can't just sort of sit back and watch forever. But yeah, so I've seen it happen with males too. I think it's just assumed that females will probably do it more. But
yeah, there's more. Maybe it shouldn't be such a gender thing. Maybe it's a skill set.
I think there is a skill set, and then some people go into it not really knowing. Especially placement students, you do it. A lot of them do that because they have to do it. You go in, they're all pretty quiet and timid and stuff, and I've seen probably more, pretty. And
it's very different between playing groups and the environment that you go into. So you might go into a team that might be on the rocks in terms of they might not be very successful, and then they're kind of changing, trying to change the culture and this sort of stuff. So you've got a team that's young, and then you can easily persuade or easily change the culture, manipulate them and push them in a direction where they want to go. So you need to make sure that you can set a standard, hold them accountable to the standard, and you don't want to kind of not have the confidence or not have the drive and be able to have a tough conversation with a person, because if you start letting people off the hook with that sort of stuff, that's when the culture starts to go out of the way. People start getting away with not doing, I can easily just go to that guy and say, don't do, oh, that's okay, you can do gym session whenever you want, but it doesn't matter, just because you're a senior player doesn't mean you get let off. No. He's, that conversation would have been the same person even if he was number 60 on our list or number 1 on the list, so he's going to make sure that everyone gets held accountable, because if you want to make a successful team culture, you got to make sure everyone's on the same bus and gets held to the same level as everyone. Yeah,
that's one thing. You've got to keep it even spread as well. Just because you're the best player on the team doesn't excuse you for not wanting to train as hard, or if you might be the best player on the team and you might think your spot's you automatically get a starting spot, but if you're not, if there's someone...
Team values.
If you're not being a team player and that sort of stuff, and obviously sometimes that you might be a best player individually, but if you're not a team player and gel as a team, you're there's going to be 10 of you and 10 of the team and 1 of you, and you're not going to perform as well.
Well, I said the same thing last week with Tom. He was how good Nat Fife is, and he's won all these Brownlows, but yet the team is famously unsuccessful in Fremantle. So what does that say? What does that say about someone, how he can work in the team? If he's a leader of a team, yet to be successful, even though they arguably still have a semi-talented list. Where does that kind of rank him amongst the best?
Yeah, that's one thing is that I know personally from playing netball, I was playing one of the worst teams, but got would get up in the association best and fairest, and it's well, am I getting association best and fairest because I'm standing out because our team's bottom and or am I because I'm up there with the best?
You don't want to be the worst player in the best team. You want to be the best player in the best team, right?
Yeah, well, even you'd rather probably be the worst player in the best team than the best player in the worst team if you're winning.
100%.
Yeah,
because I think I don't know. I guess kind of growing up in team sports and being around teams now, you kind of want to have team success. Like you kind of thrive off team success.
I guess like it's even you want to probably reach a point where you can't pick a best player. Like at the end of the day, if everyone's played their part, there is no best player.
You can't pick it.
You can't pick it, and that's probably what you want to look for. I know that happened last week when we played Sydney. It's like you're watching the game. It's like who stood out, who played, like who was the weaker link, who stood out, who do you take off? And it's like, well, everyone's doing their part. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Like you can't pick someone out and be like, this one's the best player, and ended up like they have a like team of the week, and half of the team of the week was our players because you just can't like pick. But yeah, awesome. So I think one thing is you should be able to, there shouldn't be any like too big of standouts, especially like if you're winning and have a good side and a good culture. It should all be pretty even spread and shouldn't be able to, obviously going to have your better players and stuff, but you should all do your part and exactly what you need. Yeah,
exactly right. Now, before you go, do you want to shout out anyone? Say thank you to anyone, shout anyone out? Don't have to say anything. Do you have anyone to shout out?
Thanks, Ben Brugman, Lockie Hines, Matt DeLawyer.
No worries. What are you thanking us for?
Oh, you got to me where I am. You guys introduced me into the ASCA. Wouldn't have probably done my, I don't know, if Lockie didn't pick me up, didn't take me to the ASCA conference, didn't get me too drunk at the ASCA conference, I probably would have met everyone and then all those too many beers.
I appreciate it, mate. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
No worries.